Hello and welcome to another Magic Duels gameplay. Today we're taking a look at a black-green -1/-1 counter deck, which features a lot of the new cards from Amonkhet. So this is essentially a black-green beatdown deck that's trying to be somewhat aggressive, and the idea of the deck is that we're playing these oversized creatures, like Plague Belcher, which is a 3-mana 5/4 with Menace. But of course most of these creatures have a drawback, that when they enter the battlefield you have to put a number of -1/-1 counters on a creature you control. But to offset the drawback of those -1/-1 counters, we're playing a bunch of replaceable 2-drops like Doomed DIssenter and Elvish Visionary, which we don't really mind putting a bunch of -1/-1 counters on, because Elvish Visionary already replaced itself when we played it, and the Doomed DIssenter will make a 2/2 zombie token when it dies, so we also don't mind putting -1/-1 counters on the DIssenter. So that's basically the idea of the deck, and of course there's some other -1/-1 counter synergies dispersed in the deck. So let's take a look at the entire deck, starting with the 1-drops, where we just have Fatal Push, a nice efficient removal spell. We have Evolving Wilds to enable Revolt. Also, if we happen to kill one of our 2-drops by playing a creature that puts -1/-1 counters on them, we can also enable Revolt that way. Then we have the Doomed DIssenter, which we already talked about. Just a nice 2-drop to play to set up all your 3-drops that make -1/-1 counters. Then we have Exemplar of Strength, which is by far the best 2-drop in the deck, since it also has -1/-1 counter synergies, since it's a 2-mana 4/4 that enters the battlefield, and then you have to put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature. But it's actually not bad to put them on the Exemplar itself, because when the Exemplar attacks you can remove a -1/-1 counter from it and gain 1 life. So if you can play this on turn 2 on the play, he attacks as a 2/2 and gains you a life, and then on the 4th turn he'll be attacking as a 3/3 and gains another life, and you can also put additional -1/-1 counters from other creatures onto it to get rid of those as well. So just a nice synergistic creature in this deck, and of course you can always put the -1/-1 counters on another 2-drop, for example, and just have a nice 2-mana 4/4. Then Elvish Visionary, which replaces itself when we play it. A fine creature in most green decks, and especially synergistic in this one. Then we get to Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons, which is another very synergistic card in the deck. It's a 2/2 for a black and a green, and whenever Hapatra deals combat damage to a player, we can put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, which can also be our own creatures, but of course we would prefer to put them on the opponent's creatures. And whenever we put 1 or more -1/-1 counters on any creature, we can make a 1/1 green snake creature token with Death Touch. And of course this works with any -1/-1 counters, doesn't have to be the -1/-1 counter from Hapatra herself, can also be a 3-drop that enters the battlefield and puts -1/-1 counters on itself, and you'll get a snake token for your troubles. And of course a token with Death Touch is very relevant, as it can trade with any creature on the ground. Then we have Plague Belcher, which we already covered, 3-mana 5/4 Menace, enters the battlefield with 2 -1/-1 counters, and whenever another zombie you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life, but it's not like we have a ton of zombies, besides the Doomed DIssenter that makes a 2/2 zombie token. Then we have a Baleful Ammit, which is a 3-mana 4/3 with lifelink that enters play and puts a 1 -1/-1 counter on the creature. So by default this is a 3-mana 3/2 with lifelink, which is not bad at racing aggressive decks. Then we have Tireless Tracker, which is just an excellent card and gives us some much needed card advantage going up against grindy decks, making a clue token whenever we play a land, and of course growing as we sacrifice those clues. And something I should note about the combination of +1/+1 and -1/-1 counters, as soon as they appear both on the same creature, then they will cancel each other out. So if you have a +1/+1 counter on the tracker and put a -1/-1 counter on it, then both will cancel each other out and you'll have a Tireless Tracker without any counters on it. Then we have Defiant Greatmaw, which is a 3-mana 4/5 with 2 -1/-1 counters, and whenever you put 1 or more -1/-1 counters on Defiant Greatmaw, you can remove a -1/-1 counter from another target creature you control, which is kind of a weird ability. So the best case scenario is where you play a turn 2 Exemplar of Strength, put the counters on itself, and then when we play the Greatmaw on turn 3, Then we'll put the -1/-1 counters on the Greatmaw, and we can remove a counter from the Exemplar, so it can attack as a 3/3 rather than a 2/2 right away. And of course in the late game you can also remove some other counters from other creatures, but basically you want to play the Greatmaw after you play other creatures with -1/-1 counters, so you can remove them when you put the counters on the Greatmaw itself. Kind of a weird card to play with, but it will be self-explanatory when it happens. Then we have Crocodile of the Crossing, which is a very nice card, 4 mana, 5/4 haste, that enters play with 1 -1/-1 counter that you have to put on a creature, so by default a 4/3 for 4 mana with haste is already not bad, and if you can make it into a 5/4 it's even better of course. Then we have Verdurous Gearhulk, which is just an excellent creature by itself, not particularly synergistic in the deck. Is a 5 mana 4/4 that puts 4 +1/+1 counter distributed among our creatures, and also has trample. So it can be a 5 mana 8/8 with trample, but can also make our other creatures bigger, so they can maybe attack past the opponent's blockers right away, which basically gives the 4 power and toughness that the Gearhulk gives to our creatures haste in a sense. Then we have 1 copy of Decimator Beetle just to say that we're playing it. It's 5 mana 4/5 that enters the battlefield with 1 -1/-1 counter that we have to put on a creature, and when the beetle attacks we can remove a counter and add a counter on another target creature the opponent controls. An important thing to note here is that you don't need to remove a counter to add a counter to another creature, so even if there's no -1/-1 counters on your creatures, you can still put a -1/-1 counter on the opponent's creatures. So that's kind of a weirdly worded card here, but that's how that works. Then we have Skysovereign Consul Flagship, a nice big vehicle, 6/5 flyer with crew 3, and we have lots of big creatures to crew the Skysovereign with, and when the Skysovereign enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker, so this is very good at taking down opposing planeswalkers and smaller creatures, and also gives us a tool to find opposing flyers. Then we have Ob Nixilis Reignited as a nice planeswalker, 5 loyalty, +1 to draw a card and lose a life, -3 to destroy a creature, and the ultimate can also win a game. Then we have Woodland Bellower, which can search up a green creature with convert mana cost 3 or less and put it into play, and most of the time that's probably going to be a Tireless Tracker to gain us some card advantage, but there are situations where we perhaps want to go get a Hapatra or perhaps even a Defiant Greatmaw. And then finally we have Never to return to deal with opposing creatures and planeswalkers, and return can also exile cards from the graveyard, which is relevant against Scrapheap Scrounger and cards with Aftermath, like opposing Never to returns. And then our mana base, 8 swamps, 8 forests, 2 Hissing Quagmire, which turns into a 2/2 Death Touch creature, 2 Woodland Cemetery, and the full 4 Evolving Wilds to go with Tireless Tracker to give us 2 clues right away when we play the tracker on turn 4, and of course enables Revolt for Fatal Push. Alright, that's gonna do it for the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which does have lots of our 2-drops but no real payoff cards. But we are on the draw, plus we get an extra draw from the Visionary, so I think we can probably keep this one and just hope to find one of our -1/-1 counter cards in the first couple draw steps. As our opponent leads with a swamp. Alright, there's a Skysovereign. Let's lead with a swamp ourselves. Another swamp from the opponents, and I think we'll just play the Visionary just to get a card deeper here. Don't really need to draw many more lands here. So what do we see? Alright, there we go, Baleful Ammit. So we could play that next turn, or we could wait and put the counter on the DIssenter instead, as our opponent plays an island, or rather Drowned Catacomb. And a Defiant Greatmaw, interesting. If we play the Ammit here, then turn 4 we can go double DIssenter, turn 5 either Greatmaw or Skysovereign. Alternatively we could go Ammit, put the counter on itself, And then turn 4, go Greatmaw, put the counters on itself to remove one from the Ammit. Either way, we start by attacking for 1 here. So opponent could have either removal spells or counter spells. We could play around Censor here and just play a 2-drop. Kind of throws our curve off in the sense that next turn we only get to play a 3-drop. Alright, I think we play the Ammit here and put the counter on probably itself, just to spread out our power and toughness a bit, which is better against removal spells, as our opponent really hasn't played any creatures yet, so I'm guessing they're on a control deck. Alright, so kind of get punished for making that decision here, as our opponent plays Gisa's Bidding, making 2/2 zombies. So now if we attack with the Ammit, opponent can just trade 1 zombie, but we did pick up a Crocodile. Or we can just play the Greatmaw now, remove a counter from the Ammit and attack with that. Or we can play the Crocodile, attack with both the Crocodile and the Ammit. And then next turn we can play the Greatmaw plus the DIssenter, or just play Skysovereign, which is also pretty good. So if your opponent is on a blue-black zombie deck, probably want to keep the Skysovereign to take down a zombie lord, and I don't really want to trade with the Crocodile when we can use Skysovereign to clear a path, but I do like being somewhat aggressive and curving out here, which means playing the Crocodile is the most mana efficient play, since playing 2 Doomed DIssenters doesn't seem all that great. So sure, let's go for it. Play the Crocodile, put a counter on itself, since it would still trade with 2 zombies this way. And I'll also offer a trade with the Ammit. So I think our opponent's just gonna single block the Ammit here and then take 4, which is fine. So let's see if they have a good zombie payoff card here, or if they're still setting up. Alright, we see a Plains, so our opponent's on Esper zombies. And there's a Wayward Servant, and now a 3-drop, and there it is, the Zombie Lord. So we have Skysovereign lined up. Opponent does get to drain us for 1. And if they attack here with the 3/3, they don't, then we could have attacked back with the Crocodile, as the Wayward Servant would shrink down to a 2/2 and then would not have been able to block the Crocodile. But our opponent plays it slow, which leads me to believe they have maybe a lot of removal or just a bunch more lords in their hand. But the Skysovereign should be pretty good here. Not a ton of answers the opponent could have, outside maybe Anguished Unmaking. So yeah, I think there's not much else we can do here. So let's play the Skysovereign, kill the Lord, and I will offer the trade for the Crocodile for the 2 zombies again. Since taking the opponent off of as many zombies as possible when they have cards that make their zombies better seems like a good idea. Opponent takes 4 once again. So hopefully no Anguished Unmaking on the Skysovereign. Opponent could be holding up instant speed removal for the Skysovereign, of course. Cards like Murder come to mind. And no attacks, and their opponent passes with 5 mana up, which is pretty suspicious here. So I don't think I want to crew the Skysovereign into 5 open mana. Of course, if our opponent has Anguished Unmaking, it doesn't matter if we crew the Skysovereign or not. So it's basically just Murder that we're playing around. Yeah, I can't really think of much else that our opponent could have that deals with a crewed Skysovereign that wouldn't deal with just a normal Skysovereign. Maybe it's not worth playing around Murder here, but I think we're so far ahead that we can probably afford to play around Murder. So that means we Can play still a bunch of cards. I think we attack with a Crocodile here. For opponent double blocks, we can Fatal Push one of the zombies and kill the other one in combat. Of course, a chum block is also good. Instead, our opponent has time to reflect. So, exile target creature that blocked or was blocked by a zombie this turn. So even if we kill the zombie, the Crocodile was still blocked by a zombie, so even if we Fatal Push the zombie, the Crocodile would still die, I'm pretty sure. And of course the reason I don't Fatal Push the token is because the Servant's more valuable. So let's go ahead and play the Doomed DIssenter. And then play the Greatmaw. Put the counters on the DIssenter. Make ourselves a nice 2/2 zombie token. And I think we'll hang on to the Fatal Push. No need to do it now, since we can always do it at instant speed. And that might change our opponent's play slightly. Alright, a Westvale Abbey. A little ambitious in a 3-color deck, but it could be good here for the opponent. And they're still not doing anything. Again, I don't see a reason to play the Fatal Push since we have so much mana and it's so mana efficient that we might as well attack first, maybe make the opponent double block. Question is if we want to animate this Skysovereign or if we're still playing around a potential instant speed removal spell. I think I'll play around it one more turn here. And at some point the opponent has to kill our Greatmaw and then we can start attacking with the Skysovereign. So yeah, let's attack with the zombie token and the Greatmaw. So the opponent could make a token and triple block the Greatmaw, but now we're past that point, so it looks like the opponent is just single blocking the zombie token. Do they have another time to reflect? No. Instead, they have in Okatra's name, so giving their zombies +2/+1. I think we'll Fatal Push now. That keeps our zombie in play. And basically wasted their opponent's instant there. Opponent takes 4, we'll play another Doomed DIssenter, and next turn I think I'll just animate the Skysovereign. So end of turn, nothing. And alright, looks like the opponent can't answer the Skysovereign, which is just gonna decimate their board, compelling the turns. Alright, I guess that could have bounced the Skysovereign. But the AI has other plans, so we'll take 2. And there's an Ob Nixilis, which is also great here. But we should be able to close out the game. So crew like this, get in for 11, and take down a Wayward Servant while we're at it. Alright, looks like no murder after all, but I think we were enough ahead that we could afford to play around those cards. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which I think looks okay. We can play the Visionary, turn 2, and then maybe kill one of the opponent's creatures, buy some time until we can play the Woodland Bellower. But looks like the opponent is up to an aggressive start here with turn 1 Bowmat Courier. So they're gonna get to exile a card from their library, and then later they can sacrifice a courier to get all those exiled cards. But of course no one knows what the card is that's face down. So Tireless Tracker is a reason to keep the Evolving Wilds around, but of course we do need green mana. So let's just do that now. And then next turn we can play the Visionary to block the Bowmat Courier. And then turn 3 probably still gonna play the Never if her opponent plays a better creature, since it's usually better to play a tracker when you can play a land right away to get some value, but we'll see. So 2 cards exiled by the courier, we go down to 18 and the opponent has a Insolent Neonate as a follow-up. So our opponent must have a pretty big madness theme with all these cards that make them discard. So could easily see them having cards like Fiery Temper, which is another reason not to play the tracker on 3. But of course, these are not really creatures you want to kill with Never, since the opponent can just sacrifice them in response, especially if they have any mana left for the courier. But we'll see. So does our opponent want to remove the Visionary to keep attacking with the courier, or are they fine leaving it back and playing something else? So they're just attacking with the Menace Neonate, which we can't block. And what is the follow-up? A Smuggler's Copter is not what we wanted to see, since sorcery speed removal doesn't really deal with it. But we are drawing some good cards here. I'm actually tempted to attack with a Visionary, hope our opponent crews the Smuggler's Copter. And if they do, we get to kill it with our Never. So it looks like that worked. Opponent does get to draw and discard with the Copter, but I think that's a price I'm willing to pay. So they did not discard anything, and now we get to kill it. Opponent does now get to attack with the Bowman Courier once again, but next turn we can go Tracker plus Evolving Wilds, get us some clue tokens, or we could flashback the return basically here with Aftermath. Alright, opponent with a nice Madness card here, Incorrigible Youths, 4/3 haste. So they are gonna hit us for 5 here at the very least. But I'm more than happy to trade the Tireless Tracker for the Youths after we get 2 clues out of it. And Hapatra is not really what we need here. So yeah, let's play Tracker plus Evolving Wilds to get 2 clues rather than 1. And then next turn we can play the Gearhulk even if the Tracker dies. And let's get a Forest. And the previous turn, if the opponent didn't crew the Copter, I probably would have just killed the Bowman Courier. Or I could have considered just playing the Tracker there. Alright, Ira Falkenroth, so we might see a Madness card here right away. And we do, that's the Fiery Temper that I was afraid of. So we will not be able to trade with the Youths, we'll take another 5 damage. Hopefully the Gearhulk can block the ground creatures, but now our opponent also has a 3/2 Arrow to the Night, which can start getting in for 3 in the air. So it's gonna be tough. We might be dead before we can stabilize here. And the Courier now has 4 cards underneath it. Alright, Baleful Ammit is interesting since that does give us a lifelinker. So we do have the option of going Ammit, or rather play Hapatra, then play the Ammit, put a -1/-1 counter on either itself or on Hapatra, and then get a Snake token, so that way we shore up the ground, because the problem is, if we play the Gearhulk, opponent can still attack with both, we probably have to block the Youths, and then the opponent gets yet another card under the Courier, which is not great for us, while if we play the Ammit plus Hapatra, we get multiple bodies on the ground to block all these creatures with, since the Snake token can trade with the Youths, and we get a lifelinker, which is nice. So I think I like that more. Then the question is, where do we put the -1/-1 counter? Do we put it on the Ammit or on Hapatra herself? I kind of like putting it on Hapatra and hoping her opponent can't kill the Ammit so we can gain some more life. So I think that's the plan here. So let's play Hapatra. Play the Ammit, and then of course next turn, if we do get to untap with the Ammit and put a bunch of counters on it with the Verdurous Gearhulk, we could gain a ton of life and maybe stabilize that way. Could also just be dead here to a bunch of burn spells, but we'll find out. So there's Unlicensed Disintegration on our Ammit, which is unfortunate, and we take 3 since our opponent did have an artifact in play still. They get to attack with both, which is interesting. Definitely gonna block. Not sure what our opponent can have that makes this bad for us. So we go to 1, and we basically need to find removal for this vampire here, otherwise we're dead. So that means if we don't draw into a removal spell, we have to start sacrificing these clues. Alright, opponent with a follow-up Inventor's Apprentice as well, which is also a lethal creature. So we did not find a removal spell. So I think that just means we have to sacrifice a clue to look for one. So let's tap our forest here, I think. And that's still no removal spell. I guess we can... Yeah, even if we find one now, we still can't block all the opponent's creatures, so we're still probably just dead. But I guess we can see what's on top. Alright, just a forest. So, got kind of aggroed out of the game. If our opponent didn't have the disintegration, then if we get to untap with the Ammit, I'm feeling pretty good about things. But we did have kind of a slow draw here. And the opponent curved out almost perfectly, despite losing the Smuggler's Copter, which was kind of a dubious block to begin with. But yeah, let's move on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which looks pretty good here. We've got a nice curve of 2-drops and some good top end as well. And I think we'll lead with the Doomed DIssenter here on turn 2. And then turn 3, Baleful Ammit to put the counter on the DIssenter. And then we'll have a 4/3 lifelinker, which is not bad. Our other option is just playing the Exemplar of Strength on turn 2. Could even consider playing Hapatra. That way, if we play the Ammit on 3, we get a snake token out of the deal. So, a ton of options. We don't have a 4th land yet, but let's say we draw 4th land. It's more mana efficient to play 2 2-drops there, which could mean playing Doomed DIssenter plus Exemplar of Strength, which would be nice. So I think we'll play the Hapatra here. It's our best 2-drop, I think, if it goes unanswered. So if the opponent wants to kill it, then they have to spend their 3rd turn doing that, which is a pretty important turn in most decks. And looks like they're playing a Merc Lurker instead, which does block our Hapatra, but we might still be able to get some snake tokens regardless. Opponent hits us for 1 with their Shadowstorm Vizier. Nope, it's staying on defense apparently, playing around a removal spell so that we can't connect with our Hapatra, which makes sense. So I guess we're just playing a Baleful Ammit, and I think we'll put the -1/-1 counter on Hapatra here, since it doesn't look like Hapatra is gonna connect with the opponent. So might as well make a 4/3 which can attack into the Merc Lurker. So no attacks, say go. And if we draw 4th land, we can play Exemplar plus DIssenter, or maybe even 2 Exemplars. Alright, Bontu's Monument. So makes black creatures 1 generic mana cheaper, and opponent drains us for 1 whenever they play a creature. That's fine. Not too scared of that. And opponent says go. And there's land number 4. So the opponent can potentially grow the Vizier if they have a 1 mana cycler, which they likely do if they're playing this card in their deck. Probably want to attack with our Snake and the Ammit. And then we can go Doomed DIssenter plus Exemplar. Put the -1/-1 counters on the Dissenter. Is there a reason to do that main phase 1? I don't think so. So yeah, let's go ahead and attack. Opponent double blocks, and I think I'll kill the Murklurker here rather than the Vizier. A little risky from the opponent since we did have some mana up, but trade works out, and now we can play Doomed DIssenter into Exemplar. Get a Snake and a 4/4 and a 2/2 zombie. Not a bad deal for 4 mana. So here's hoping our opponent doesn't have a sweeper. Alright, it's a Priest of the Bloodrite instead, which thanks to the cost reduction only cost 4 mana and comes along with a nice demon token, which does die to Fatal Push since converted mana cost is 0. So if we ever find a Fatal Push, we can have a clean answer to the demon token. And of course, if we hit land number 5, we can also have a nice big flyer in play. But for now, I think we'll just have to attack with our Snake tokens and play out some more creatures. And let's see if the opponent wants to trade with the Priest of the Bloodrite. Nope, they don't, so they want to keep the 2/2 around. And I think we'll just go with Dissenter plus Exemplar again. If we wanted to play around a potential sweeper, we could just play the Dissenter without killing it. That way, if they do have a sweeper, we still at least get a 2/2 zombie out of the deal. But I think we want to maximize the power and toughness in play here, which means doing it this way. Could also put counters on a Snake token and get a new Snake token, which basically means we just miss out on a Snake token, but I think we'll go for the maximum EV play if our opponent doesn't have a sweeper here. Renegade map, that's fine. And a Darkslick Drake. Opponent drains us for 1 again. So it looks like the opponent has a blue-black flyers deck of sorts with defense on the ground and then flyers to get the job done. So if we can find a land number 5 for the Skysovereign, we'll be in a good spot. There we go. So let's see here. So I don't hate just attacking with everyone. Could also play Skysovereign main phase 1 to take out the 1/3 flyer. If we attack first, then our opponent likely blocks with the Drake on, let's say, a 2/2 zombie token, and then we can finish it off with the Skysovereign. But if we kill the 1/3, then we do potentially get some more damage through. So I think I like attacking with everyone, except for Hapatra. And then playing the Skysovereign to finish off the Darkslick Drake, just because that means that if we attack with the Skysovereign next turn, we can cleanly take care of the Vizier, while if the Darkslick Drake doesn't get involved in combat, then we can't finish it off with the Skysovereign. So that all looks fine, and now we get to Skysovereign, finish off the Drake. Opponent does get to draw a card since it dies. But now we have a pretty commanding board state. And Baleful Ammit can also gain us some more life. Alright, opponent has a Never to take out a 4-4. But they can't return yet. So there's an island. And yep, the demon's gonna have to stay on defense for now. And I think that just means we could animate the Hissing Quagmire here, but I think I like playing the Ammit, making another snake token, and I think we'll put the counter on the Exemplar, since that one's gonna attack anyways and get rid of the -1/-1 counter. And then crew with the Ammit. And then attack with everyone, including Hapatra. Exemplar removes a counter, gains us a life. And the opponent, I think, has to block the Skysovereign. And still takes 8 damage. And we get to put a -1/-1 counter, and I think we do that again on the Exemplar to make another snake token. And I don't think we play the Evolving Wilds in case we draw a Tireless Tracker. And with 5 lands, the only card that can punish us here is if we draw Woodland Bellower, which costs 6 mana. But we can cast all our other cards, and since we only have 1 Bellower and 2 Tireless Trackers, I think it's worth keeping it in hand here. Opponent can play the Aftermath to make a 2/2 zombie, but our snake tokens are overwhelming here, so got to show off our synergies as we draw Woodland Bellower. Alright, I guess I won't complain. So let's send in everyone. I don't think there's anything our opponent can have for 2 black mana to stop this. So yeah, I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this gameplay. And as always, have a nice day.